to Argo Unpacked.
Are you experiencing secret chaos and missing the best of GitOps because of how you've set up Argo CD? Why you should be using versioned config maps and why most people don't. Plus, there are critical security updates to Argo CD, all on today's episode of Argo Unpacked. I am your host, as always, Dan Garfield. I am an Argo maintainer, have been for many years now. Feels like a decade at this point that we've been doing this. Love it. Work at Octopus Deploy, where I run our Kubernetes and now AI strategy. Very excited to talk to you all about all of that stuff and more on today's episode of Argo Unpacked. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, make comments, invite your friends. This is a chance to get people talking about the things that impact software delivery. That is the AI final boss of what is stopping you from deploying more frequently. It's CD. So anyway, if that comment doesn't make sense, maybe it will later. Before we get into all that stuff, and we've got some cool guests today, let me introduce the tip of the week.
Tip of the week.
All right, today's tip is brought to you by the letter A for Argo. So the tip this week is version your config maps. If you're not versioning config maps, you're living in the dark ages, folks. Why would you version config maps? What does that mean? Well, when you update your when you update your Kubernetes application, oftentimes those updates take the form of just maybe some changes to a config map. But here's the thing, when you change a config map and update it, all of the pods that are running with that config map mount will probably already have consumed the value from the previous config map and don't have a mechanism to have it updated. So in order to get your application to take the new values from the config map, you need to go and restart the pods. Now, you can do this, of course, by deleting pods, which would create downtime, or you could scale down your service and scale it back up, which of course would also do the same thing and create downtime. Or you could use a handy dandy trick called versioned config maps. So the way that this works is every time you update your config map, it makes a new config map with a name that is unique. That name is then referenced by your deployments automatically. And this can be done with Kustomize or Helm. And when your application is updated, it will automatically start a new deployment, new pods, mounting these new secrets. When they are ready, of course, when their readiness check, readiness probe passes, then Kubernetes will move the traffic over. And of course, you experience no downtime. And you get the added bonus of having your applications updated and ready to go automatically just because the name has changed. Now, how does this work? Well, there's two tricks for doing it. One for Kustomize, one for Helm. Kustomize has a helpful feature where it will, if you're using the config map generator, it will automatically name the config map with a hash of the contents of that config map so that it is predetermined. That means that it's because it's deterministic. Argo CD, every time it renders it, it will get the same name, but it is unique to each generation or the contents of that config map. So this is really cool trick for working with Argo rollouts as well, because you can change the value inside a config map and you will get progressive delivery that is using a separate config map. And when you do a rollback, it'll roll back to the previous config map. Super cool feature to have and be able to use. So that's how it works with Kustomize, is you just use the config map generator and you basically don't have to do anything extra to get it to work with Argo CD. Now with Helm, it's a little bit more complicated. The feature to update the name automatically inside of Helm, you basically need to define a value that will create a sum of the YAML inside of the config, truncate it, and then you just attach that onto the name of the config map. As far as I know, I don't think there's an easier way to do it with Helm. I don't think there's a built-in feature for it in the same way that there is with Kustomize. So very easy to use, and you get all these benefits. Now, most people don't bother to version their config maps. Maybe it's because they're not using Kustomize. Maybe it's because they're using third-party Helm charts that don't bother to add this feature to their Helm chart so that it names the config maps. Unfortunately, the truth is with Helm, and this is always the challenge with Helm, you have to deal with what third-party Helm providers provide, and a lot of them don't bother to version their config maps, which means you don't get all these added benefits. So you can consume it as a third party. You can make an umbrella chart and then maybe try to disable the config map and generate your own. A little bit cumbersome. So that's why a lot of people don't do this trick. If they're building their own stuff with Kustomize, of course, super easy using the config map generator, very preferred way to edit config maps using Kustomize. And of course, if you're building your own Helm charts, then you can add that function in. Be a nice feature if Helm just supported it as just kind of a native, like, hey, this just happens automatically and you have to disable it in the same way that Helm does, or Kustomize does, but Helm doesn't do that. So that is maybe the reason why some people don't use this trick, but it makes everything easier, updating your applications, automatically restarting deployments, versioning them so they work really well with Argo rollouts. So you can do a rollback canary release that's using the new values. That's one issue with canary releases. If you think about it, if you don't version your config maps and you make a change on your config and you make a change to the config map, the existing version, as long as it doesn't accidentally restart, will get the old values because it's already consumed them. But if it accidentally restarts for any reason, you now have this mismatch where, hey, I want to do a rollback to the previous version and spit up new pods. Well, they're going to consume that newer version of the config map, right? Because they don't have an alternative. So with progressive delivery, you really have to be versioning your config maps. Otherwise, you're not going to be covering that use case. So hopefully that's super clear about why you should be versioning your config maps. It seems like, I mean, when it comes to using Argo CD, hey, I'm not telling you that there's no special configuration you need to do with Argo CD. The only thing is you just need to make sure that the names are deterministic, so that Argo CD isn't generating new names every single time it syncs, which of course with Kustomize and Helm, there is a built-in way to do that. We did do a talk a few years ago at ArgoCon where we were demonstrating how you could make like a Helm bomb that would basically, it was a Helm chart that would continuously spin up new applications. And part of the trick to it is that we would have it make deterministic names of those Helm charts that it would generate by basically we would have an output of each Helm chart that would generate a new Helm chart, and it would use the name. It was like a hash of the previous version. So they were deterministic, and you could make essentially infinite numbers. Now, if you don't use a deterministic name, every time it's just going to generate a new value, which if you're trying to make a Helm bomb targeted at Argo CD, it'll delete the old application, assuming you have Prim turned on. So, I just threw a whole bunch of stuff at all of you that might sound like too much inside baseball, but hopefully that tip warms your heart and you can go and version your config maps. High value feature. Now, as we go along, feel free to ask questions. If that didn't make sense, be shouting about it in the chat and we'll talk about it. But in the meantime, let me introduce our guests and we'll pick up, we'll see what their take is on the Argo tip of the week. And then we'll get into today's topic of secrets, the right ways to manage secrets. We see so many anti-patterns with the way that people have managed secrets in Argo CD, unfortunately. And of course, we'll get into a lot of the Argo news. There is a critical vulnerability out for Argo CD, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. So first, let me bring in our guests.
Argo Unpacked, special guests.
All right, today we're joined by my producer and co-host, Ravital, as always. We've got fellow Argo maintainers, Kostis, who's an Argo rollouts maintainer, but has also defined the way that people deploy Argo CD and is kind of the best practices hero of the entire community. And of course, Patroklos, who's a newer Argo CD maintainer, just got upgraded last quarter to an approver, a scoped approver on Docs and CLI, and is on track to become an approver, I think, in the next quarter. So great group here. Thanks for coming on.
Top 5 contributor, if I
top 5 contributor for the last 6 months. Yeah, already. Yeah, huge accomplishment, Patroklos. Well done.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
I refer to these guys just as the Greeks because they're both in Greece, and when there's a problem, I'm like, get the Greeks. We need their help. We've got a big problem that there's a few number of Greeks can solve to hold the line against the onslaught of the AI PRs that we're getting. Anyway, so Kostis, Patroklos, Revital, any reactions to the tip of the week? Anything we left out? Anything people need to do differently?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about specifically Argo rollouts, because this is a very common question. If I have an application with Argo rollouts that is using a config map, and then I deploy it and something goes wrong, what happens if I roll back? And this is where most problems start, because if you try to roll back to something that does not exist, your application will not work. So the answer there is to use the customize config map generator. If you're using Customize, I have a guide for this that essentially allows you to have two config maps at the same time, the old and the new. So if you have this, then Argo rollouts works out of the box. If you stay with a new version, all the pods look at the new config map. If you go to the old version, all the pods go and load at the previous, and everything works fine. If you don't use a config map generator, you will have issues. That's one use, and also there are more uses with Helm as well. So it's possible to do it with Helm. The article talks about Customize. So if you're using Argo CD, this is an important tip, but if you're using Argo rollouts, this is an essential tip, I would say. It's even more important.
It's so much easier with Customize because it will automatically update all the value names for you that are in the references. Whereas in Helm, you have to kind of manually make sure you're referencing stuff using the same function. So it is like a little bit more work with Helm. But yeah, I threw on the screen here. This is a link to the blog post. And we'll throw it in the show notes as well, so you can read this. I think I found it by Googling progressive delivery for Kubernetes config maps using Argo rollouts. So that's the title. It's on the Octopus blog now.
Yeah, good SEO. And also there is the running theme where people ask us what should I use, Customize or Helm. And my personal opinion is that for your own applications, you should use Customize, and you should use Helm for off-the-shelf applications. So one of the reasons I suggest this is exactly this topic. But it's very easy to do it if you're using Customize already.
Yeah, it's so easy with Customize. Have any of you ever experienced that issue where you've got to deploy a change and it's like on a config map, and then you're like, hey, how come my change isn't there? And you're like, wait, how come my change isn't being taken? Like, I just deployed this change and my application isn't different. Why is that? And you realize oh, it already consumed that secret when the pod started, and now I have to restart the pod. And then you're faced with that dilemma of there's not a good way to restart pods without creating downtime, really. Maybe you scale it down partially. I don't think so. I don't think that works. You would just get a mix of traffic when you did it. So there's not a way to create a new generation just to as an imperative command. You have to just create a new deployment. Sucks. Any other comments on the tip of the week before we move on?
It's weird, Dan, that it's not very popular version config maps. So I'm really wondering why people are not following. This should be the de facto, the standard, how config maps are actually managed. But I haven't seen many people actually doing this, which is, quite weird and worth mentioning.
Ooh, you know what we should do? Here's an idea, brainstorming between our team here. Okay, so if you're in the audience, don't steal our idea or help us accomplish it, but make sure to give us credit. Maybe we should make a tool that lets you score third-party Helm charts. And it would look for stuff like, hey, does this Helm chart version their config maps? Oh, it doesn't. This is lame. -1 on the scoreboard. And if
many other stuff that Helm doesn't do the right way, or Helm charts don't follow the standard practices. That would be a great tool.
We could make it a standard that was hey, you don't do the GCI compliant Helm charts. You don't even offer that. I don't know if we're going to work with you if you don't offer the GCI compliant Helm charts with a score over 80 plus. Good. How can I trust you? Because there's so many third-party Helm charts that we've all had this experience where we go to deploy something and we're like, oh, I need to change this one value. And it's that's not even a value that you can change. Or everything is templated and it's a nightmare. Or I've consumed Helm charts where I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. They got a Helm chart for it. And then it turns out that the Helm chart is literally everything is parameterized into the values file. So you have to deploy their default values file to get it to work, and it's terrible. A running theme of this show is complaining about bad problems that are created by Helm, unfortunately, in third-party Helm charts. Maybe we could make a tool, we could create a standard that everybody will have to be measured against, and then you'd be like, oh, you're not.
Dan, you think this is a good idea? Like we will give very low marks to some very popular charts and people might complain. Yes?
Who are they going to complain to? Us, who have a good standard for how Helm charts should work, or the maintainer who made a crappy Helm chart?
I can see another flame war happening.
It's a good thing we got the Greeks on our side, because otherwise we might be in trouble with it. We might be outnumbered. No, I think it. Let's talk about it offline. I think that could be a cool project, and it is something that's worthwhile because you don't know when you adopt a Helm chart what it's going to be like until you actually have to go change something, and you suddenly realize like, oh wait, like this doesn't work with progressive delivery because they're not versioning their config maps. Like, oh, this doesn't work with my ingress provider or my storage class. I can't define my own storage class in this thing. This is lame. And it would be something that we could use internally as we're developing like the Octopus deploy Helm charts. You know, like we always realize we'll be like, oh shoot, we didn't cover this use case in the Helm chart, and a customer will complain about it, so we'll fix it. But wouldn't it be better if we just, every time we learn something, we put it into that tool and everybody used it and it became like a standard that people could follow to make their Helm charts awesome? I'm into it. The comments are blowing up. They're saying, how dare you besmirch my favorite Helm chart? No, nobody's saying that right now, but maybe they will. Maybe they will soon if we do our jobs.
Which one is your favorite Helm chart? That would be another episode, right?
Your favorite Helm chart?
Yeah.
I don't know. We all deploy Prometheus, and that one, that's like the first experience I had where I was like, oh, I have to change the settings of Argo CD to get this to deploy correctly because it's too long. It won't update. I need to do server-side apply. That's like the classic one that everybody runs into. Kai Verno, a lot of us have deployed that Helm chart and then like accidentally set it up so that we couldn't deploy anything else because we had pods that were removed, and so the policies couldn't be met. We're like, oh shoot, I can't deploy anything. I can't fix it. I have to remove the policies first. The injection webhooks. We've all had that experience. Do you have a favorite Helm chart, Pat? No.
No, I don't think so. No.
It's like having a favorite toothache. It's like, oh, I really love it when I get a toothache, upper back. That's my favorite.
That's my favorite, yeah, exactly.
They're all kind of a toothache. All right. Okay, well, I think we've covered the topic. Version your config maps, folks, because that's a good thing to do. Let's get into today's topic of secrets and then we'll get into the news. We'll talk about the critical security vulnerability a little bit later. So, Kostis, why don't you set the stage for us about the challenge of secrets with Argo CD and what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, can you share my screen, please? I have some visual things to show.
Yeah, you bet.
So this is for anyone who is just listening to us, this is the playlist from ArgoCon that happened last month in Amsterdam. And it has all the recordings from all the talks. You should go look at the list and see what is interesting for you and, watch them. I think it's great that they were also uploaded maybe 1 week after this. So if you wanted to really see a presentation, you can do it. So the interesting thing here is that for some reason, or actually for many reasons, my presentation has over 2,000 views, which is really strange. Okay, it's on top right now. And it was really strange because this is about secrets. It was a presentation for secrets. And when I was submitting the presentation, I said to myself, hey, this is super boring. We have done so many presentations about secrets. People know how you use secrets with GitOps. It's not something new. Like the program committee will see the presentation and we say, not another presentation, for secrets, and it will be rejected right away. So not only it was not rejected, but given this high number of views, I think people, not only watched it, but they shared it with their team. There was also a post in LinkedIn where Chris said that he specifically loved my presentation because it was non-AI related, which I find pretty funny. Like if you do something that is non-AI related, usually it's supposed to be boring. But for me, this shows that people want to learn about secrets, and that we as the, let's say, the Argo team and as the Octopus team should not take this for granted. We should not think, okay, we have talked enough about secrets, there's nothing to say, it's an old topic. So I will start with this small intro that, even though I did not expect this, GitOps and secrets is a really hot topic that everybody has questions, or maybe everybody wants to discuss. Make sense?
But yes, one comment, because it's not an old topic, right? It's exactly that. Argo CD 3.0, there are recommendations on what to do and what not to do, unlike previous versions. So this is kind of a newish attitude, right? It's pretty interesting.
Within the last year, but even like before that, like we've been talking about these ideas, like the principles of like how to do secrets properly for like 7 years. Like since really Argo CD even hit like 2.1. There have been recommendations coming out from different people in the community, but I think what Kostis you're going to say is that when Argo CD 3.0 came out last year,
official.
As a project, we actually did make an official recommendation.
Yeah. And I just have one more comment, since I'm a community manager. You mentioned all of those talks and sessions that were uploaded to YouTube a few days after the conference. There are also a lot of posts about exactly those shorts on the LinkedIn channel of Argo project, and as well as X and Blue Sky. So if you're not subscribed yet, you're not following, please do so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think this was also important. It wasn't just any presentation about secrets, but we talked specifically about Argo CD 3.x and the brand new secret management page. So for anybody who has seen this page before 3.x, that page was super simple. It just had a list of secret solutions, and Argo CD said, hey, go use whatever you want to use. We don't say anything. But now there is a clear recommendation. And if you also go to GitHub and look at the discussions and the pull request, this was not something that was created, in a morning in 2 hours. There were discussions about exactly what to recommend and what to not recommend. And this is probably the main theme for today, that finally we say what you should not use. And since this is not a KubeCon presentation and I can say whatever I want, do not use any plugins. Don't do secrets in Argo CD plugins, not the Argo CD Vault plugin, not the CMPs, not any custom plugins you have. I think by coincidence, the Argo CD Vault plugin is not even maintained right now. Maybe I'm missing something. Yes, Pat, you remember?
I think it does not very active lately. Not because of your talk, Kostis, but
no, it happened before. But
I
think it's the theme. Like people saw the correct answer on their own, like we should use. So
no,
now there is
with an official recommendation out from the project, people were like, "Oh, okay, stop using that." And I'm sure that there are lots of people who are still using it just because they're legacy. They set it up this way. But the way that these work, these plugins, is when Argo CD renders the manifests, which happens in repo server, it connects in a secret store and it injects secret values into the manifests during the time of Argo CD rendering. And maybe we should just explain why that's such a bad practice before we tell them the right way to do it.
I think so. In this presentation, there was a demo as well that showed, let's say, the benefits. But for me, it's mainly two reasons. First of all, because essentially you are going and overriding Argo CD, and let's say you're throwing GitOps away. You say, I'm going to mutate my manifests. So they have one form in Git, and I take them, and then I mutate them on the fly, and then I do something with them. I think that's one part. But also for me, the biggest one is the practical part. Like you tie secrets to Argo CD. So you have, Argo CD spill over the secret space, and Argo CD is not a secret management solution. And every time you need to rotate a secret, you need to do a redeployment. You need, again, to mutate your manifests, update them again, and redeploy. So you have tied completely separate things together, which for me, you shouldn't do this.
Yeah, and the Argo CD also stores all of the manifests that it generates in plain text in the Redis database. So having a secret injected there, even if you generated a Kubernetes secret using that, it still is going to have all those values like essentially available inside the Redis database. So you introduce this new attack surface. And then if you're using the rendered manifest pattern and you're having Argo CD commit those manifests, well, it's going to commit secrets now. So that stinks. So it's just a problem all around. And it's so much easier just to do it the right way using like an external secret operator. I don't want to step on the next step, but that's what I'm sure we were going.
Yeah, I think we need also to explain to the audience, for the people that do not know this, that the rendered manifests pattern essentially is a pattern where you store the output. Like instead, having Argo CD on the fly, rendering your manifests and then apply them on the cluster. Instead, you do this again, but you store the end result somewhere. In the most typical case, it's another Git branch, and then Argo CD deploys from there. So it's pretty important to understand what is the source, like, what Argo CD starts with, what is the target, and understand where the secrets are in this transformation and where they are saved. So it wasn't, let's say, the biggest factor, but it was one of the factors that made people realize that this is not a very good idea. So that was the recommendation. And right now, if you go to the documentation page, instead of listing all the possible solutions, there is also a clear recommendations for 3 specific secret solutions. One is the Bitnami Shield Secret Controller. The second one is the CSI Secret Store Driver. And the third one is the External Secret Operator. And originally, I thought, let's make the presentation, talk about these 3 tools and show examples about these 3 tools. But I wanted to make the presentation future-proof. So instead of talking about specific solutions, I wanted to talk about the pattern and explain why this is the recommendation and what these tools have in common, like why we recommend them. And the reason that we recommend them is essentially they are an external controller, like they're a separate controller outside of Argo CD. So the slide I have right now, which is from the presentation, shows our recommendation where there are 2 completely different life cycles. You have Argo CD that only deploys applications. It doesn't know anything about secrets. It doesn't load secrets. It doesn't transform secrets. It doesn't inject secrets. Okay, it's just happily deploying applications. And then you have a separate secret operator or manager or controller that it's responsible for secrets, and it has its own life cycle, and it is responsible for fetching secrets, rotating secrets, do everything with secrets. So the common, let's say, feature between the Bitnami Shield Secret Controller, the CSI Secret Driver, and the External Secret Operator is that they are completely external to Argo CD. They are not part of Argo CD. And I think it's also pretty clear for everybody that you can use the external secret operator without Argo CD. Okay, you don't have to use it with Argo CD. It plays well with Argo CD, but it's a standard solution on its own. Same thing with Bitnami, same thing with everything else. So the important takeaway from this slide is these are the solutions we propose today. But if tomorrow there is a brand new solution for secrets and you're wondering, hey, is this a good idea or not? You can look at this slide and say, yes, it's a good idea, it's not a good idea, without asking anybody. Like, you don't need to go again to the Argo CD team and say, hey, this new solution appeared, is it good or not? You should know the answer by yourself.
I think to play devil's advocate here for a second, if I'm using like the Bitnami Sealed Secrets controller, I'm encrypting the secrets and then committing them to Git. And then the secrets controller will take those secrets server side, decrypt them, mount them, and run through. Basically, just creates a Kubernetes secret that then gets mounted afterwards, right? In that scenario, if I'm looking at my deployment history in Git, so if I'm in Argo CD or if I'm in Octopus deploy or whatever, and I'm looking at my previous deployments, I will see that change made in Git to the secret that I see created a new release and deployed my application because it got synced to the cluster. If I'm using the external secrets operator or the CSI driver, both of those connect to an external secret store like Vault or KMS, or I forget all the acronyms because every cloud provider has their own one with its own acronym. Or if I'm using 1Password, which is what I prefer to use, I really like the 1Password connection with external secrets operator. If I change a secret there, of course, it's not committed to Git. It's not versioned there. So now when I look at my deployment history, I have a change that may have occurred from secrets that is not recorded as part of a deployment. Now, of course, you could update the secret via, if you're really using like Octopus deploy, I guess you could have a step that like updated the secret and then waited to see that it was deployed. So it would be part of a deployment history. But like as a default thing, how important do we think that is? Like, because now I have a change that could be a breaking change if I set values there. It's not part of my Git history. Do we think that's a deal breaker?
So Bitnami is a bit special, and you can see on the slide from the 3 solutions, I'm actually recommending ESO. It's a bit special because it's encrypting the secrets, and this is like a trade-off that each team needs to decide, what they want to do about it. So there are teams that say, I love GitOps. I'm going to follow GitOps 100%. I want everything committed in Git, okay? And then they can use Bitnami sealed secrets, or they don't care about this and they can use one of the other 2 solutions. I personally do not recommend Bitnami sealed secrets, not only for the reason that you explained, but also because it makes secret rotation super difficult. You need to, re-encrypt and do everything. And also it's per cluster, like you cannot reuse secrets per cluster or per namespaces. So if you have like a small cluster or, in a home lab, I think it's a good solution, like it works. But if you're in a big company, in a big enterprise, and you have many secrets, many applications, many clusters, I personally do not recommend it. And for me, that would be
the disaster recovery scenario is a little sketchy
the disaster
too,
recovery.
Very easy to by default deploy the Bitnami sealed secrets controller. It generates, its keys cluster side, and if you don't save those anywhere,
you need to back them up, and they are different per cluster, and so on and so on. So in the slide, I have a small star next to the external secret operator, which is the recommendation. But I think that the Bitnami sealed secret controller is in this list because it's, again, an external controller. It's not part of Argo CD. And as I said, again, you can use the Bitnami sealed secret controller on its own. It's not tied, to Argo CD in any way. It's just a project that can be combined with Argo CD. Another also related question is, what is different between the last 2 solutions? Like if you have a choice between the external secret operator and the secret store CSI driver, what should you choose? And they are mostly similar, like the end result is the same. They have the same, let's say, idea where you store your secrets in Vault or another secret repository, and then they fetch the secrets, and they both support auto-rotation. But the biggest difference is that the external secret operator is using Kubernetes secrets. Like everything it takes, it loads into Kubernetes secrets, and then they are mounted to your applications, while the secret store driver can be used to mount the files directly to your pods without any Kubernetes secrets. So is this important for you? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Like some people do not care. Some people have a policy somewhere that says do not use Kubernetes secrets for any reason, like we don't like them because they are not safe and so on. And they are going to select the secret store driver. But as a starting point, the external secret operator is the recommendation.
But Kosti, just a naive question maybe, but if I get it right, an SEO at the end, what it does is getting the secrets with an external tool, and then it mounts them to a pod, right? As a plain text, if I'm not wrong.
No, it converts. No. It converts. I have this on the next slide. It converts an external secret. Like the external secret is a new resource that you get once you install ESO. So you get an external secret. This gets converted to a secret. like a Kubernetes secret, and then it's mounted on the pod.
Okay, so in the end, you have the same result, right?
The end result is the same for all solutions. The only thing that changes is how you reach that end result. With the CSI store driver, you can, let's say, bypass this step and get the file directly in the pod right away. And it only works with files.
But in your example, because I was in this presentation in Amsterdam, which by the way was, and you are really humble, was packed, right? There were people queuing outside, couldn't get into a room. You mentioned that at the end you can have an application that loads the secrets directly from environment variables or from a config file, right? Which means that in the end you have this file in a pod, correct?
Yeah. At the end, it's like this. But the reason is how this gets created. That's the second part of the discussion, how you make your applications smarter so that they can auto-reload secrets.
Isn't that creating a security, let's say, surface that, hey, I have my secrets like available in the pod, in the file, right?
If the attacker has access to the pod and in the memory process, it's game over. Like nothing.
That's the last thing you care, right?
Nothing you can do. That's
now
it.
the CSI driver is a little bit more secure potentially, because the way that the CSI driver works, as I recall, which I actually haven't used the CSI driver. I use external secrets, and I've used Bitnami quite a bit. But the way that the CSI driver works is it injects it into the pod, and you can essentially load it into memory. You can choose to load it into memory during like the startup phase and then delete the files, for example.
That was my next question. If there is a way to have this, and once you read them, then completely wipe out the file.
Now they're still sitting in memory, but they wouldn't be in like the file system, so they would be a little bit harder to reach and get to.
Exactly.
But generally, I mean, within the industry, it's considered, hey, if you use a Kubernetes secret, Kubernetes secrets are obfuscated, they mount, and we consider them safe, and most people do consider them safe. And that's kind of the best practice right now. But if you wanted to go extra, you could do a CSI driver as part of an init plug, like an init pod, consume, load into memory, kill the system, and then only have it in memory. But they're not encrypted in memory either, so unless you did extra work, I guess.
So if anybody wants to play with these, there is already an article and also the presentations for the external secret operator. So the application is there, it's open source. And to complete the trilogy, I'm actually preparing a blog post with a CSI secret store driver. So we'll have a 3 out of 3. The blog post is not ready, but the example is up in my account. So if you search, secret at my account at GitHub, you will find both examples. So you can run them and see exactly what happens behind the scenes. So it's a good idea to compare them if this is something that is interesting for you. And in both of the cases, there is an example application there that follows the second recommendation, where the application is monitoring the files and it will auto-reload on its own. So then you can rotate secrets without any restarts. You don't kill any pods. You don't do any of these things. You just rotate the secret and that's it. But this is separate to the solution that you have chosen. Again, it's something that works great with Argo CD and with ESO, but it's part of your application. And it's something that at the very least you should do anyway, even without secrets. I think it's a good thing for having an application to auto-reload the configuration if the configuration changes.
Well, actually, let's go back to that issue that we talked about earlier of if I'm using Bitnami, I make a change to the secret. Of course, that's in my Git history. Now it's very clearly part of my deployment history, move on. If you're using the external secrets operator, with most providers, you can actually version the secret. You can point that external secret resource at a specific revision or specific version from your secret store. And that way, if you're doing that, you would have a two-step process. You would update the secret, and then you would update the version you're pointed to in your manifest. And then, of course, it would become part of your deployment history. And I think it's actually the same with the CSI driver. I think you can also reference secrets generally as a versioned value. So most people probably aren't doing that. I'm not doing it in my home lab. I should be, but that would be the best practice. And then you would always know, you would always have versioning attached to your secrets. And so if you did git revert, or even if you were using Argo rollouts or something, you would have versions that are pointed at different secret value revisions. Now, I think for it to work with Argo rollouts, you would actually need to have a versioned secret name, which I don't know if it does that. But I don't think it does do that. Does it, Kostis? Do you know?
I need to check. I remember. This is what I was going to say, that right now we have blog posts and examples for two solutions. So this is the article for sealed secrets, and there is a repository. That's the repository for ASO, and that's the repository for everything. So you can go on, check out the code, find the applications, and make all the tests that you want, and understand exactly how each solution works, and you know what are the advantages and disadvantages according to your company. So we are going to complete the 3 out of 3 for the recommendations that are on the Argo CD documentation page right now.
You know what everybody Googles when they use these tools is, how do I get the secret to refresh? Right?
Automatically.
Like, oh, I updated the secret. Like, how do I make sure it's been applied? Like, because I'm waiting for this operator to run. And everybody has an answer. And it's like, oh, here's how you set the timeout, da 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 da. But the actual answer should be version the secret. you don't refresh the secret. You just version the secret. Then you update the version.
You should do both. This is also another important slide from the presentation, and it shows for all the popular programming languages what library you can use in order to make your application auto reload. Because sometimes I know developers don't know that this is possible, or they ask, how can we do this? And it's not something magic. These are open source libraries. They exist right now. You can see I have here Go, Spring, Node. So it should be, I don't know, 3 lines, 5 lines of code to make it. It's not a big refactoring. For me, the biggest problem would be the first one, like making the application read from files instead of environment variables, because many applications still use environment variables. But once you have everything into files, this should be like a super simple task.
Yeah, because most of these don't support reloading from environmental variables when they change.
Nothing supports reloading from environment variables. You cannot reload anything. Like an environment variable is fixed. That's it. You start the process.
Yeah, and you can't. Yeah, once
it.
you start the pod, you can't. I mean, you can modify it after the pod has started, but there's not a
nothing will happen.
way to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd need to be file system. So okay, that's actually another good point, that using environmental variables for secrets is probably another anti-pattern. Don't do that. It better use the file system. It's going to be easier. But it's the same thing with just updating them in general. Do we care if they change their application to support it or their Kubernetes manifest? Because either one could support the reloading of the value.
Ideally, they should change the application source code. And for me, this should be part of a bigger change. Remember, we are talking about secrets, but I always recommend to do the same for configuration in general. Because sometimes you're not going to rotate a secret, but you are going to change a configuration setting. This can be handled automatically. Like, you shouldn't have to say to the developers, hey, I changed this setting, go and restart, go and redeploy, go and resync. Why? Have the application auto-reload. It also makes, I wouldn't say testing because it's a different word, but let's say it makes validating stuff. Like, you deploy the application, you let it for 5 or 10 minutes to work, and then you say, oh, what will happen if I change this setting? Just change it and see what happens. It doesn't have to be in production. If you go into all this manual way of I change something and then I need to redeploy and redeploy and redeploy, things become more difficult. And if you redeploy, all the memory gets empty, all the caches. Like, maybe you want to see how an application behaves with exactly the same context, exactly the same payload for everything.
Kostis, this is it's a sort of one of the most nasty bugs in production, forgetting to reload a single pod with new settings. And although it's the same code, one pod runs with a previous configuration, and you can't even figure out where's the bug because it happens only on this specific pod with the previous configuration, previous secrets, or whatever. It wasn't reloaded.
Yeah, what a nightmare that is. Do either of these, do any of these solutions support hashing the secret, the Kubernetes secret? So that we could name them in the same way that we do config maps. Like, if I version my config maps, I use a hash name, Is there anything that lets me use hash names for secret names?
I think it would, like if you hash it and put like an extra property there so that you know it's the same or not, I think that would work. I mean, hashing the whole thing and putting a property with a hash or something. But for me, I think you should
Is it
try
really
to.
needed?
Yeah, for me, you should first try to understand. I was going to say this: why you need this. Like, what's the use case? What's the need behind this?
Well,
This is a slide I have.
Like if I wanted to support Canary release, where I have a new secret, and it just like config maps, just like the Argo tip that we gave this week, it would need to have a hashed name. And
I think it works. Let me check.
I just Googled it, and it looks like in the external secret operator, you can specify a hashed secret name as long as you're using the V2 advanced templating engine or something, but it's not a default behavior.
I think if you go to Argo Rollout's best practices, there is a, at the bottom, actually, let me open this here. So at the bottom, there is the explanation about the config map change. And I think somebody from the community has already submitted the documentation for the secret. So I'm assuming it will work in exactly the same way. Okay, I need to check the pull request for Argo Rollouts.
Yeah.
But this is also one of my favorite slides, that you should always talk with developers, understand what the application is doing, understand what they need, tell them what you need. When you, I mean the Argo CD operator, so that both groups understand the needs of each other. Because several times, and secrets is one of those cases where either you don't know what the other team is doing, or you know what they are doing and you don't want to go and ask for help or do something, and you start trying to do workarounds and hacks for things that you shouldn't have to do in the first place. Which, I mean, the whole DevOps movement is supposed to be this collaboration between those two teams. So specifically for secrets, you should go and talk to the developers and say, hey, I want the application to auto reload the secrets. This is what you need to do, and this is how it's going to help me in my day-to-day operation, which in turn then will help you in your day-to-day operations.
I want to talk about this picture where they're tandem climbing and they've put a single sling around a rock while they're walking along the ridge line, and if one of them falls, they're going to yank the other person off their feet. I don't know if this setup is safe.
Make sense.
Dan, it's a real one. Okay, it's not AI.
It's a real one, yeah.
So you can send me your own picture, and in the next presentation, I'm going to use your own picture. Okay.
Mine wouldn't look as spectacular. Theirs looks beautiful. I just want to ask them about their safety setup. I'm just curious about it. Tied to another person who's climbing on a ridge line. If one of them falls, they're gonna get yanked. But they have a sling for protection there, so that's something. Hey, next time on Argo Unpacked, climbing safety best practices coming your way. Rivital, we should probably get into the news. Did you have one more comment? Sorry.
One more comment. If speaking of developers, I saw in your presentation, Kostis, that you're mentioning that there are a lot of asks in the community to make Argo CD become a secret management solution. So this is basically a big don't.
Yeah. So the last part essentially was specifically talking about Argo CD development, because I was also representing the Argo CD team, and here is a slide that shows 3 of the top voted issues in Argo CD right now, where people are asking for Argo CD to go into the secret management area. And these are issues that many people have voted, they have commented, they say, we need this, we need this. And if you read the description, it makes sense. But essentially what they ask is, I want Argo CD to become a secret management solution. And this is not something that we want. And now I'm speaking, as the Argo CD team, we don't want Argo CD to become a secret management solution. So this presentation was also my effort to explain to these people, and like this group of people, why we are not going to go into the secret management space as the Argo CD team.
Yeah, great read.
I have another question. I know that several people are struggling with sync waves and secrets. There is there is this perception that you need to have your secrets deployed before the application. So they're using sync waves only for secrets. Is this true? Is this required?
I think sync waves deserve a whole presentation on their own.
Yeah, I know. But
they're getting abused. No. My
secrets.
answer is no. You shouldn't need sync waves for your secrets. It should work out.
Ideally, your app should be able to get up the secrets when they're ready. It doesn't matter which one is deployed first, correct? And
same thing for the applications themselves. Like you get people and they say, I want to deploy my front end first or my back end first, and then the front end. Why? Why? Your front end should start without the back end, and the back end should start without the front end. That's another big topic.
Yeah.
True. Because I've seen several people asking about sync waves, where combine sync waves and other stuff to deploy your secrets. But you're right. That's an idea, Revital, for another episode, like Kostis said, sync waves.
Definitely.
All right. So thanks for the great discussion about Argo CD and secrets. As Kostis is pointing out, Argo CD is not a secrets management solution, but there works well with many wonderful secrets management solutions. Of course, there's always some strategies that you need to employ to make sure you're doing it well. Let's get into some of the news from this week for Argo CD. And first off, there is a critical vulnerability out for Argo CD last week. This vulnerability requires access to Argo CD as a user, and it involves using a specially crafted manifest with an annotation to do a server-side diff, where you can expose secrets from the cluster because Argo CD will do a server-side diff and return the results for that secret, which would expose the secret to a user that didn't necessarily have access to those resources because it's going through. Now, if you're using Argo CD's impersonation feature, you're probably already protected, but most people don't use that feature. There is a new version out for Argo CD, and we backported the last 2 versions. We might have even backported 3 versions because we considered it critical, even though we don't technically provide coverage for the past 3 versions. So if you haven't updated Argo CD yet, this critical CVE is out there, and we have the GHSA published on the Argo CD subreddit. It's been published in the Argo CD social media channels. And of course, if you have a security scanner, you'll get an alert about it. So make sure you update. And again, this isn't like a random person can show up and extract secrets, but the fact that a user could, it's enough of a reason to upgrade. Any comment on this one before we move on?
Upgrade now.
Upgrade now. Okay, then the next issue that we were going to talk about is, there's a cool new, let me throw this on the screen. There's a tool out there that's called Argonaut. We've talked about it before. Someone in the community made it. This is not an endorsement. Maybe it's full of security holes and it steals all of your stuff and sends it to another country or something. I have no idea, but it is cool. They put out a new version of Argonaut that includes support for Argo rollouts. So this is a TUI or a TUI, a terminal user interface for Argo called Argonaut, and it supports Argo CD. And they just announced that they've added support for Argo rollouts that was contributed by somebody from the community. So like to see projects like that gaining ground, getting attention. So it might be a cool thing to play with. Again, not an endorsement. If you get hacked, it's not on me. But it's probably good. There's a lot of people in the community using it, so it's probably fine. Famous last words, maybe. All right. And then we also had this, and of course, if you have any questions about secrets, throw them in the chat. But we did ask the community, Revital, I should say, asked the community for some discussion about open secrets. And a lot of people said external secrets operator, that they really like that. It's totally solved the problem for them. A lot of people are moving to external secrets operator. Awesome. And And then there were some discussions about like being ready to do rotations without redeploys in prod. I think this is interesting. He says we rotate without redeploys in prod. It's more headaches than it's saved, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we talked about that scenario, Kostis, of should you be able to rotate without a redeploy covering in the code that it automatically reloads. Do you think that, I tend to think that if you're rotating secrets, I would prefer to have a commit trail history that shows that, and versioning my secrets gets me there.
He or she, maybe she doesn't give any more information about the headaches. Like what exactly is the problem? It's with the application, the rotation, something gets lost. It's not really clear to me.
Well, it's like if you change the secret and then it's like it turns out that the application didn't support hot reloading, and then you have it secret loaded, but you're like, oh,
but it says we rotate without redeploy. So I'm assuming that the application is already doing that. That's my assumption. If not, you have bigger problems.
I mean, they have a whole bunch of applications, so maybe it's like some support it and some don't, and then like they're probably looking and saying like, hey, did it pick up the new secret? And it's like, I don't know. How do I know? Like, I gotta go
a big problem is you don't really know which secrets are used by which applications. That's the biggest problem if you have a big company. So you rotate something and you think that an application is taking this secret and this application doesn't. But that's not, a technical problem. It's a human problem. You need to sit down and catalog which applications are using which secrets. There's no other way around it.
Yeah. Let's take this question here. He says, he or she, Rocketeer 125. Yeah, the last one is Marie Clarice EXO. Sounds probably a lady. Rocketeer 125 says, ESO and GSM solves secret read and sync. However, we are still having a problem with secret write, updating a secret, or secret lifecycle, like creating a new secret or deleting it. We use the following combo to manage secrets with the Google Secrets Manager backend: KCC, config connector, secret definition, create, delete the secret, set policy, who can access the secret, sealed secrets, insert the new secret version and the value into the secret, external secrets operator uses secrets in the environment to manage updates. If you aren't on GCP, you can use Crossplane to manage secret lifecycle. I don't know if I understand the problem that they still have secret, right?
But the first question is why do they use both sealed secrets and the external secret operator?
And I have one more question. What do they mean? There's a problem about creating or keeping the previous version, because TCP has this versioning. You can keep the secrets, you have versions. So it's very confusing to me.
I suspect that they're just supporting multiple teams and that different teams have chosen different tools.
So again, human problem, not technology problem. It's standardized.
They're always human problems. All the technology problems are human problems.
But why do they have a secret with secret write, updating a secret, or a secret lifecycle?
Yeah, it sounds, I mean, it's weird because they say that they've solved secret read and sync, but secret sync means that you did secret write, right? And updating it, and deleting it. Like sync should be all of those things.
Probably it's like if the secret is even written, we know how to read and sync, but the problem is that we can't write. Probably that's the problem. Or we don't know how to write properly.
All right, Rovital, let's send our question to Rocketeer 125, and maybe they'll clarify, and we'll talk about it offline. But interesting question, interesting discussion. Hey, join those discussions on Reddit or jump into our next scenario, which is going to be in Discord. This is from the Argo, GitOps Champions Discord. We had a discussion last week. Let's see. Wait, it doesn't, looks like it's showing. Hang on.
It's down.
Hang on. Let me, that doesn't work. Can I just show this in a new window?
Which one?
I see. I shared. No, I don't know if I do see. All right, here we go. Can I hide the sidebar? Anyway, is there a pattern you guys have developed for putting Argo CD behind an Argo rollouts in order to test platform level changes for Argo itself in a GitOps manner. Related to this, are there patterns for a management cluster deployment models for being able to do dev test for Argo CD that don't use branching, or is just expected that you'll have an overlay for Argo CD for dev and prod, and you expect people to run multiple clusters to house multiple instances of Argo CD, or run multiple instances in a single cluster? Are there any plans for tighter integration with Argo rollouts for Argo CD so that promoting code from dev test prod from the platform itself doesn't require one to adopt an anti-pattern like branch-based environment management or maintain multiple instances? And what is y'all's personal preferred method for managing multi-tenancy in Argo? Locally at the ATX Kubernetes meetup, everyone really is against the management cluster concept because of the pain of dev and test for platform teams. Everyone does multi-Argo or multi-namespace Argo or a combo of the two based on size. Very interested in your 2 cents on this. Or another golden blog post. That's like 8 questions.
Okay, but
Whole
the
book.
topic is about updating Argo CD itself. The first 3 bullets are about this. So he's asking about using Argo rollouts for updating not an application, but Argo CD itself. And this is also another good episode, maybe Revitar, but my answer there would be don't use Argo rollouts for Argo CD. Okay, it's not for that.
Yeah.
You should also read a blog post about finalizers that explain how you can use finalizers to launch a second Argo CD instance that then runs with the previous one. You test whatever you want to test, and then it adopts the applications. So you can safely update Argo CD if you want by launching a second instance and not touching the instance that you already have. I think that's the most safe scenario.
I don't know, Kostis. I think because you're basically saying use 2 instances, point them at the same resources. I think the safer thing would be if you add a sync window to deny synchronization, and then you could do that scenario, or you could just have 2 Argo instances, either 2 Argo instances, or you update your Argo instance. And because you've introduced a sync window, you'll be at least able to preview any synchronization updates or changes that would happen. And it would prevent, like if an application accidentally got deleted, you wouldn't have, because of the sync window, it wouldn't do the operation to delete the application.
But Dan, share your screen again. You didn't show the most important comment by Troy.
He said, I'm going to say this, but take it with a grain of salt. I always worry about Argo CD updates the most, but it has been consistently the most boring upgrade I do.
Amazing Argo team. Yay.
That's good news. But I've had people who have experienced downtime or issues because they updated Argo CD and they had something in their application set that behaved strangely. They had some accidental deletion. And we also have content about accidental deletion and how to prevent that. So, we have blog posts about that. But I think that sync windows are underutilized by people to prevent this kind of thing. When you're making a change, use a sync window. But most people, we recommend, hey, you should have a staging instance of Argo CD that you can make changes to and make sure everything works. And then you can upgrade production. Your scenario of running 2 at once, it's pretty safe. The resources will get an update for ownership when you sync to the new version of Argo CD. So yeah, if you're following that, we've done those side-by-side Argo instance installs and upgrades are very, very safe. So maybe just add a sync window to it. Would be my
I think for most people, you can just read the release notes, like the migration notes of Argo CD to understand the importance of a new version. And then if you don't, read something super strange, just go for it.
I'd say always do staging,
Yeah.
And if you're using like Octopus, like let's say you have like 100 or 200 or 1,000 Argo instances, you can use like Octopus deploy to orchestrate, like update this one, then update this one, and make sure it's safe, and get a manual approval for the production one. But that's like you bring it, that's just process that you can enable with something like that kind of tool. But it's not limited to Octopus deploy necessarily.
And we do have an episode about Octopus deploy, so you can definitely go and watch it and learn more.
Yeah, that's a good one. Good questions from the community this week. Let's go to one more. This one's
You
less of
didn't
a
use the banner, Dan.
banner, Michael. What banner?
The community questions one.
Oh, wait.
The
You're right.
video.
I'm so sorry.
You ask, we answer.
Oof, aren't you pumped now for the segment that we just did? Yeah, you're right. I totally forgot. My bad. I'm sorry, Robitel. Well, this is so on the news topic. I think we have just one more item on the news topic, so we'll just cover it unless there's any other questions in the chat. But hey, there is a Amazon announced and released last, I think it was November, a feature for EKS users where they can add Argo CD to run hosted by AWS and managed by AWS. This is the hosted Argo CD offering. Happy to share that. Well, why would you use this? Well, you don't have to deploy Argo CD. You don't have to update it. Amazon is responsible for it. Limitations, of course, you can't really change the way that Argo CD acts. If you wanted to change something in the Argo CD config map, you're limited to that. Debugging Argo CD, you're going to be limited in that. So there are some upsides and some downsides. It's a choice you can make. We've found that a lot of people run a lot more Argo instances when they do this because they are limited to, I think, 1,000 applications by default. So if you are going to do something like this, recommend using this amazing thing called Octopus Deploy, which will connect and manage it. There's a whole blog post. Everything DevOps actually sent this blog post over to Octopus Deploy, and we put it on the Octopus Deploy blog that shows you how to connect AWS EKS Argo CD instance to Octopus Cloud. Super easy. You just follow the normal install. Actually, it works right away. There were some special things we needed to do to support Amazon's instance. You can't read the CRDs directly. You can't read the Kubernetes manifest directly. You have to work off of the API level, but we were already equipped to do that. So pretty easy for us to handle. And then it needs gRPC web, some other stuff. But this does let you connect all of your EKS AWS instances to Octopus Deploy, whether you're using cloud or server, and then you can manage deployments, promotions across all those Argo instances. Nice thing about that is that instead of going to each Argo instance, you now just have a UI and place you can go to see all of them. And much more critically, from like a business standpoint, I can enforce policy across all of them. So if I want to say, hey, production environments, I've tagged all these environments as production, they always require an approval before deploying, I can enforce that as part of the tooling inside of Octopus Deploy, which is really cool. So nice features there, and great stuff from the community, and lots of news happening in the Argo world. The next episode of Argo Unpacked is, what's the topic?
It's a surprise, and it's in 3 weeks, not 2 weeks, because it's the Memorial Weekend.
Memorial Weekend. Okay, yeah.
So it's a surprise for now. Still working.
We are gonna soon have maybe a debate. There was a whole discussion about the idea of using application revisions for handling versioning that involved some of the other people who contributed to the GitOps principles. And so this might be, is this a fracture in the community? Do we know what the right way is to handle revisions? Are Kostis's best practices going to fall under the pressure of GitOps maintainers? Tune in next time at Argo Unpacked to find out.
Probably. Yeah. June 22nd for this.
Okay, so there's our promo for that episode. It'll be June 26th when we do that one. So that'll be not next episode, but in like 2 episodes. Okay, great. So lots happening there. As always, if you have additional questions or ideas for episodes, send them to us on Argo Unpacked, on X, on Blue Sky, on LinkedIn, whatever you want to do, on YouTube. We appreciate you subscribing. We're very close to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. So keep on sharing it, people. We appreciate it. And we'll keep making these episodes as always. Rivital, final word. Anything else?
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Help us get to over 10K subscribers.
Okay, you heard it, people. Get out there and do it. Make sure to share it with your friends. We appreciate it. And as always, everybody, stay synced.
Argo Unpacked. Stay synced.